tire brush has bearings in two different positions. The bearings on the end of the brushes are, again, what we call rotational bearings, 360 degrees. They need to be on a 1-week grease schedule. The pivot bearings on the back of the arms and on the end of on the back of the brush are just that. They're pivot bearings. They only move approximately 30 degrees when the tire comes in and out. So they only need to be greased on a monthly basis. When greasing the tire brush, again, like the others, what we're doing is popping on our grease gun, giving it approximately 3 pumps. Okay, always clean the fittings. Make sure that we have them so we don't splatter grease onto a vehicle. Back bearings, same thing. We've got 4 to do on each arm. We've got top and bottom on both sides, and they all need to be greased just the same. About 2 shots each one based on their greasing schedule. Okay. Then again, clean all your grease fittings after greasing. Okay. The brush should be able to move freely if we push it backwards and forwards without binding. Same with the passenger side. The greasing is the same, and the brush should be free motion all the way till its full extension, and then it comes out automatically back. Okay? Shock absorber is adjustable here. If we want more tension on the brush, we would loosen up the bolts, slide that bracket forward to compress the spring more, to give us more tension. If we want it a little bit lighter, we could loosen the bolts and let it slide back to give a little less tension on the tires itself. But its normal motion is free spinning, free floating, in and out. The rotation of the brushes are again down towards the car. So the driver's side brush, if looking at the entrance end, would be counterclockwise. Passenger side brush would be counterclockwise, and the driver's side brush would be clockwise. So they're spinning down into the vehicle so that we don't fling any tire cleaner or any dressing up onto the car. Greasing the rotational bearings on the end of the brush should be weekly. About 3 pumps worth of grease, again, to push the moisture out of the bearing, but not the grease out of the seal, to keep the seal intact. On the pivot bearings, once a month, again, just about 2 to 3 pumps worth of grease. All 4 bearings on each arm, top and bottom. All the way around, and then again, keep the grease fittings clean. Wipe off the excess grease as you go. It's important to check the plastic and the transition points on both the entrance and the exit end of the tire brush. The half-round plastic is stationary. It's cut and mitered to meet with no resistance towards the front piece that covers the bearing on the unit. You want to make sure that it hasn't been gouged or broken loose from any damaged vehicles. Make sure it's intact. If it's intact properly, you won't have any damage to any vehicles, tires, or wheels. And you want to check both sides of that. You can see the rotation here is aiming down towards the vehicle. So the rotation is that way. Same thing on the brush on this side here. It's the opposite rotation. It's aiming down into the tire. The RPM of the brush should be approximately 350 to 400 RPMs. Too fast to time, mostly by eye, but you want to get good revolutions. You want to make sure they don't stall on the tire themselves. Okay? We need to go to the other end of the tire brush to check torque plate adjustment and motor mount. On the exit end of the tire brush, we have another rotational bearing and another arm with 4 bearings. Again, this one needs to be greased on that weekly basis here, 2 to 3 pumps. Also, the inspection points here is we have our coupling that attaches the brush spindle shaft to the motor. It's connected by the coupling, and then the motor is mounted through a torque plate. As you can see here, the torque plate bolt is put on with a lock nut, so it won't loosen up, but it's not tight, it's loose. It's designed to let this motor float and move up and down in case we get a bent brush or the brush flexes on a large vehicle. It'll allow all the stress to be in the coupling, not on the motor shaft and not on the bearing. It allows, even with a bent brush, the motor will continue to operate without fatiguing the shaft and causing a leak. A lot of times the big mistake is somebody sees the bolt, thinks it's loose, they tighten it up. We want to leave that bolt just the way it is, loose so that wobbles. Again, we have an entrance piece of plastic, UHMW, to protect the motor and protect the tires from the gear here. We want to make sure that it's solid, it's intact, and it's in good condition. The transition point here is when the brush is pushed all the way back, we want to make sure that the brush does not go back further than the conveyor rail itself. We have about a 1/4 of an inch gap where the tire brush stops in front of the rail to make sure that's a nice smooth transition if a car is pulling to the left-hand side. And that's where that should stop. The stop bolt adjustment on this unit is mounted on the back of the arm. And it's adjusted out. It's a 3/4 inch bolt that actually hits on the arm and stops the brush right before it gets past the conveyor rail. That needs to be watched and maintained. If it's not in adjustment properly, it can allow a vehicle to get hung up there, jump a roller, possibly cause a damage.